Hi, this is Laylee with In Vivo Leadership Strategies, and this is Integrity Over Scale podcast. Welcome to Integrity Over Scale podcast. My name is Laylee, and I am so excited to have Anslem here with us from Mindful Mission. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. And good to see you, Laylee. My name, as Laylee just said, is Anslem. Full name's Anslem Elumogo-Gardner. I started Mind for Mission. We launched at the end of February of this year. So we have been in business for what, 4 or 5 months now? I don't know what time is
Wow.
really. And we are revenue generating. But a little bit about me before Mind for Mission. I am a first generation Black man with a Nigerian father and a mother from Kansas City, Missouri. And it's really the two of them and both of their personalities kind of molded me and kind of what I care about, what I'm passionate about. My father as an immigrant was very much bootstraps and you can be and do anything that you set your mind to, which I think
Wow.
a lot of kids or children of immigrants know that kind of vibe that carries throughout the household. And my mother was one of 7 siblings that grew up on the north side of Kansas City, a rougher area, and really had to scrap and get, resourceful to make it herself. And so both of them really valued just opportunity and being in rooms where the people that you connect with open more doors for you. And I knew early on that whatever I did, I wanted to help people and I wanted to help people that needed more help than usual, whether it was because they were from a marginalized community, a person of color, women, whatever. Early after I graduated undergrad, I knew that was kind of the trajectory that I wanted to take. And since I've worked in the nonprofit sector for a very long part of my career. I had a brief stint in finance, but so 15 years or so, I've worked on nonprofits on the cultural and community driven and youth side. And all of that incredible stuff that I saw, I also saw the other side of it. I saw, the gaps and where there were vacuums for information and education and confidence and imposter syndrome and all sorts of things that really inspired me to start Mind for Mission. So I can tell you a little bit about Mind for Mission as well. We are a Chicago based, I'm in Chicago, but we are a national company, but we are located here in Chicago, but we're an AI consultancy. And I wouldn't say we're actually an AI consultancy. I'd say we're a consultancy with AI in the backdrop because really what we do is we help local businesses, and that's for and nonprofit and mission driven organizations adopt AI in ways that are human centered, responsible, and actually stick. We're not in the business of just saying, here's some slap on AI cool thing because it's what all the buzz is about. But we come in, actually learn your business,
Uh-huh.
understand where there are gaps, understand where money is bleeding, and we find ways to address that. And oftentimes AI can help. So, really, the thesis is simple for me. It goes back to the theme that I laid out for you with helping others. I strongly believe that over the next few years, AI is going to be the line between local businesses thriving and getting squeezed out because a lot of companies that have been doing this at scale for a long time have had this technology or the budget to not require it, like giant teams of analysts and such.
Thank you so much for not only giving me your background, but also what your company does. I can easily say it's very inspiring and the love that you have for people. And I keep hearing AI, and companies that I'm attracted to speak like yours, they talk about the human centered approach and how important it is. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. Thank you for always keeping us center with what we need to do in where we are in our company. I would love to know more about what inspired you to start Mind for Mission.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for it. I was at my last contract gig was at One Hope United, which is a child welfare agency in here in Chicago or here in Illinois and also in Florida, about 800 staff across both of those states. And one of my tasks in that contractual project or that contractual stint was to author their inaugural AI policy. And it was very much centered around protecting them legally, having like a strong baseline of understanding for their staff, making sure there was uniformity or conformity across staff and across sites in the way that it was used. And what I quickly learned was that this company, which was fairly big and had a decent sized budget and some complexity to it, was dealing with challenges of adoption and analysis paralysis. And there's just a lot of noise out there, right? Like AI can be scary and AI is this and it's that and it's agents and it's all these different things. And I had the legal team in my back pocket there and I had all the staff leadership and it still was really hard work. And I got that policy written and it was a very strong starting point, but I felt it needed
Mhm.
so much more. It needed not governance, it needed a training schedule, it needed recurring board oversight, just because it like I've said before, AI is so powerful that it's changing so often. So I started
Yeah.
having conversations and began to see a pattern. And it's that every small business owner that I talk to and every person that I talk to, honestly, is drowning in a lot of AI noise. And like you hear, it'll take your jobs and your data could be leaked. You might get sued. And you hear a lot of that, but you also on the other side hear all the great things it can do. And it's more powerful than it is. And it's thinking by itself. It's not doing those things, by the way. AI is actually, I don't love the term intelligence because it's
Uh-huh.
data processing. It doesn't have human intelligence. It's a tool just like our cell phone. And I think all of that noise leads to analysis paralysis, is what I say. So people freeze, they wait, and the business that's already getting squeezed because we're in a terrible economic environment right now, and all these other companies that aren't feeling the effects of the economic environment are leveraging AI and
Mhm.
leveraging all of the powerful tools at their fingertips, potentially even quantum pre-releases that are out there. So for me, it was, I think the high tide raises all the ships, and these small and local businesses will drive up those big ones. And we just need to understand that and tell that to ourselves more. And if there aren't these big Silicon Valley companies and consulting agencies that are going to help these businesses, it's the businesses that have to do it. So that inspired me to say, let me go round out my knowledge. I went to Kellogg and got an AI advanced certificate, right? An advanced
Mhm.
certificate AI strategies for business transformation. I started taking all sorts of certs that I could. I built my team, I raised some money, and then I start having more conversations that directly led to helping them implement this tool and modernize.
I mean, to me, what you're doing is just so valuable because as a consultant myself, when I'm in companies, all I see is we're rolling this out, this is going to happen. And then there's very little knowledge about what AI can do for their company. So the leaders are spending very little time in it and pushing their people to implement it. And there are all these different gaps, in other words,
Yep.
just everywhere. So for me, what you're doing is so important because Mind for Mission, in my opinion, is saving the world from itself. Because if you continuously push these tools without understanding something that they provide and knowing that ultimately how this could maximize what you're doing, then you're just ruining companies for everyone. You're replacing employees without
Totally.
thinking about what's internally happening. And this is actually taking me to my next question for you that's more of a two-parter. What are some common gaps that you see in businesses when it comes to implementing AI?
Okay. And I totally agree with everything you're saying, by the way. I feel like I just had this conversation last week with someone I was catching up with.
Mm.
But to add to what you said, some of the recurring gaps that we see, no matter the size of the business, could be, like I said, 800 people, like One Hope United was, or 8 people. There aren't really AI policies. And that's dangerous, I think, for companies and for individuals who aren't necessarily protected and who don't know how to implement and have safeguards. But so no policy on how it's used, what it's used for, who's accountable, when not to use it. And I think that's a good starting point. It's the starting point, in my opinion, for any organization before you start dropping in solutions, is to at least have a policy about how you're going to use this thing and like how you're not going to. And everyone we talk to, they have employees that are already using ChatGPT and Claude. And we've heard from CEOs who say, we know our staff are emailing us with AI tools. And
Mhm.
sometimes we see AI talking to each other. We're in the world in which, and you'll see two emails and they were both written by AI. So it's like, did anyone even read these emails? And if there's a policy in place, right? Like you can say, you can use AI as a framework, but you can't just have it spit out and respond to emails, just basic things like that. Another one I would say is there's a lack of a baseline literacy or like digital literacy across the board. That's always been the case, right? I think I'm a little bit of an early adopter. I like to tinker with new things, and I had ChatGPT, and now we're Claude, primarily Claude shop, but I had them early on and I was playing with them, but not everyone is that way, and that's totally
Mhm.
fair. Like, they can be overwhelming, as exciting as it can be, you don't wanna, like, mess things up, and so I feel like some digital literacy and especially for, like, teams that have a wide breadth of people, because 'cause you've got some folks who've been at the organization for 20 years, and they like
Mhm.
doing things the way they always have, and they don't like to adopt new things. And you have people that are way ahead of the curve and they're using a million things behind your back. So I think just a bench line or a bench, like a base level training around AI and the different tools and what it can do is necessary. And then there's not always a human in the loop by design. I think people have heard the term and they understand what it means philosophically, but
Mhm.
from a technical standpoint, that means you intentionally put it build into your prompt where AI is responsible for checking in with you before it produces anything. It asks you questions. You make sure you stay in the loop. I like to say human in the lead because you not only need to be in the middle of it, you need to be out front and thinking about things that it might be causing harm to unintentionally over time, like bias. We're going to see so much bias and so many things that AI is doing because we don't have enough people out front thinking about the consequences in the future. And
Mhm.
then again, I talked about it before, but paralysis happens in businesses. I'm just not going to do that because I is this and AI is that, and they stand still. And this is
Mhm.
like most harmful, in my opinion, to owners and to this. And they're also overwhelmed. So you add, they're busy. There's a lack of, just time and bandwidth and concern and then all the noise around AI on top of it, and they don't implement it, and they just keep getting further and further buried, I think, in behind. So, that I've seen that, I've heard that, and not only have I heard it out of their mouth, we'll have conversations, and they know they need to do this, and they want to do it, and you have to stay on top of them because either they'll let the day-to-day grind suck them back into that work and they get behind, or they let the noise say, I don't really wanna take this risk," that analysis paralysis I talked about. But, like, it's what we've learned a ton over these weeks, and we've got clients and we see these same themes that we address when we talk to you.
Oh my gosh, valuable information. The paralysis really sticks with me the most. So, speaking of that, Forbes actually had this wonderful article that they wrote, and they mentioned Lean In. And Lean In had surveyed, I think, more than 1,000 Americans, and women were 22%, less likely than men to be regular AI users. And what was even more fascinating is that men who were surveyed were significantly more likely to report their managers encouraging them to use AI. So, my question to you, because you are such an expert in this field, is what are the gaps that you're seeing with, percentages that we're talking about with women in AI?
Yeah, I love that question. Oh my goodness. And I have some data around this that I've been looking into, but I also have anecdotal, like real qualitative sort of experience that has happened. I read a similar study that, studies put women's use of these tools at 20 to 25% men's below men's. I think you said 22%. And among that, the strongest driver is confidence. And I think, like you said, that confidence comes from encouragement. It comes from a lack of fear to fail. I think men generally fail forward more often. That goes, the same for men of color. There's a little bit of a fear that if they fail, they don't get second chances and doors close up quick. And I think women experience that as well. I also read that the gap is widest for women and people over 45. So think
Mm,
about being a 47-year-old woman in this country and being introduced to AI, like, and knowing all these risks and all that noise and, like, not necessarily wanting to even play with it and mess up something or take that risk because of the confidence that isn't there. What I'll say anecdotally is that so many of the conversations I've had have been with men in these
mhm,
companies. The tech leaders are typically men, the COOs are typically men. So, like, these roles are already kind of very much male dominated. And then add to that everything that we were just talking about, the confidence as well. So, when I do talk to women, which we have, there are a
mhm.
number of CEOs and different roles in which we've talked to women. I have just seen the imposter syndrome and show up in these different ways. Like, I'll talk to a woman and they say, "I think," or "Does that make sense?" or "I'm not certain." That sort of language a lot more in my experience, whereas
Mhm.
their language is much more confident. "I know this, and this is how we do that." And, like, and it's I can't give you the exact data around it, but there's
Yeah.
definitely a difference in posture. There's a difference in, risk taking as well, and I
Mhm.
think that's a little bit what I was referring to earlier, that, like, not wanting to take a chance, and I think on top of it, we're seeing, like, and I was talking to my founding board member about this, Liz. We're seeing an assault on some women-dominated, like, industries. Like,
Wow.
HR is, in my experience, very female heavy, very woman-led, very women heavy,
Mm,
and those jobs, from my understanding, are getting snapped up. And it's not necessarily even AI, it's corporate greed, it's repositioning, and companies are getting rid of roles like chief culture officer and, like, we had the onslaught of jobs that got eliminated because they were DEI, but a lot of those were women led, right? Like, and then so you have all of this huge economic shift, and you have AI as a backdrop and a scapegoat for some
yes.
of these things that are happening, because I don't think in reality AI is taking HR jobs. I think companies are just getting a little bit greedier and a little bit more savvy, and that result is that, and even like the teaching industry and nursing, there's all these like women-led
Yeah.
spaces that are getting turned on their head. And I read somewhere that Black women alone experienced nearly a 40 decrease in not unemployment, but job attainability.
Wow.
So,
Mhm.
like, all of those things are kinda happening, right? And I think that confidence, I think the reality there, I think to fix for a confidence and trust gap is, like, the business I'm interested in, not just for Mind for Mission, but
Mhm.
in general. It's how I move around the world. It's like, how do you reduce that fear? And to reduce the fear, you have to change the reality. You have to change and put more women in leadership roles. You have
Yeah.
to change and put more women in male-dominated spaces, but also equip them and don't give them a glass ceiling, or a glass cliff, I should say, or ceiling, right? Like, they think
Mhm.
they can go higher and they're stuck. You have to have a sensible on-ramp, so that requires a lot of training and support because it's not just gonna be flip a switch and just put this woman in the shop or give this woman this AI tool and suddenly things are solved. And I think like the same philosophy gets applied to those who get left behind. If you don't
Mhm.
have any of those things as a company or as a woman or as a person in a space that's dominated by another demographic, you freeze, you get left behind, and the gap continues to grow. Like, so I know you asked me a question about the gender gap and AI, and I kind of got off on in a
No,
lot
it's
more
great.
larger, but I think it's interconnected. I think there's like a lot of overlap.
I absolutely agree, and I'm really glad you went off tangent because I think the conversation is not just women, but there are so many people falling behind. An immigrant as well. I moved to the US when I was 10 years old, and I tell my significant other all the time. I said, my first leadership, I was a minority, I was a woman, I was 25 years old, going to a small city to lead. No one wanted me there. Within the week, I was told no one wanted me there. And so there
Wow.
are so many realities and truths to what we are seeing, and when AI comes into your point, when we have a scapegoat, then it's just easy. Well, blame AI. We got to get rid of
Right.
you. And we are losing culture, we are losing good people, we are losing the human-centered approach that we actually need, to your
Yep.
point, for AI. So
Yep.
let's go to transition maybe in a more positive way now too, and really talk about how can we as leaders equip ourselves for the future of AI.
Yeah, that's a big question. I really, really like that one. I think every sensible leader at some point needs to just stop and
Mm.
think about what AI is and what it isn't. And we hear so much about what it does, but we also need to understand what it can't or what it shouldn't do. And I said earlier, it's a tool. It's not actual intelligence. So we need to move like that, right? Like, so there needs to be an understanding that every bit of information I give it, how I prompt it, I'm actually training it and it's going out and sifting through data that other people have given it and that it's found online and all of that. And it's pulling back and it's using predictive data to tell you what it thinks you want to hear or what the best solution is, but you need to use your brain first. So it's like understanding the association between ourselves and AI. Every leader needs to like do that and maybe have
Mhm.
several conversations about it before just getting all excited about the hype and the capabilities. I think after they do that, I talked about it before, but write an actual AI policy, not like a press release, not a one pager, but think about how they want their company to show up, how they want to show up in partnership with this tool, just like a cell phone. I remember when the internet came out, there's policies about how you can and can't surf on the web, and you have to sign pages of things when you join a company. So you're not
Right.
doing nonsense on company, laptops and things. You need the same for AI. Like, get ahead of this. I think too, is build your own literacy first. Like, if you want to be the leader in this, you have to tinker, you have to take some courses, you have to learn from folks. You can't lead what you won't touch. You'll
Mm.
have the same fears that everyone else has. Uh, I'd say keep humans in the loop and in the lead. So if that's not you because your literacy isn't quite there, you need to go out and get someone. That can be a CIO, that can be like a role you make up, but go find someone who has like that's not me. On my team, I'm pretty knowledgeable about AI, but I have an AI and tech support specialist and I have a chief technology and transformation advisor on my team because they know much more than me and I learn from them and they're in the loop. So anything that I create, I'm going to send to them and say like, hey, like, tell me what you would do or like, blah, blah, blah. So not only do I have a human in the loop in my own process, but I have a trusted advisor who knows much more than me because this stuff is hard to keep up with. We're that team if you need us, right? Like,
Mhm.
and then I say move at the speed of trust for yourself and for your team. So like that's the discipline that separates real adoption from theater because you're gonna in a couple years see a bunch of especially big companies. I feel like they're just gonna throw mass amounts of money at AI based on these promises of ROI, and they're gonna maybe not see any return. So I feel like part of that is actually having a plan, right? Building your it's
Mhm.
the first 3 things I said, and part of that roadmap, that strategic plan, and all of that needs to be written again at the speed of trust. So if you have people on your team that aren't going to be using these tools or have apprehension or need more training or whatever the case is, you're going to spend a lot of money, spend a lot of time, spend a lot of resources spinning your wheels and not get a lot of return. You're going to look back and say, what did this AI actually do to did I let this staff go for no reason? Or did I change the role and now we need to hire another role to make up for the changes that we did? So, like, only go so fast. There's as long as you're, experimenting and figuring it out and implementing it at your speed and getting good returns on it and measuring those returns, you're good. Like, no one's behind you with a hot iron saying, like, go faster, like more. I mean, there are people, there is that noise, but no
Mhm.
one internally, hopefully, should be doing that to you, which is why you need a sensible, smart leader who thinks about what AI is and AI isn't before they approach any of this.
Amazing. Very sound advice. And you mentioned the fear part, so I have to tap into that because that's all I hear when I talk about AI myself. What should what should we be concerned with about AI?
Yeah, you'd think that someone in this space who, like, literally is an advocate for it wouldn't have so many fears, but I think that actually equips me to move more responsibly and to educate myself and be a better partner in all this. But some of the things that we should be concerned about are, and I have been the staunchest advocate and proponent for this, and I think the people most affected aren't in the room when policy's getting written for this stuff. And I'm talking at the very top level. I'm talking, the leaders of OpenAI and Anthropic and all, like, they've got really smart people and really incredible teams, but there are some communities that are not represented. And we're already, I think Harvard did a study, I believe, that AI in screening is making some of the timeless mistakes that people were doing with bias, like screening out black sounding names, putting men into roles at a higher clip rate than women for certain roles, like because AI is learning from our history and the data that's out there and from us. So, like, we have to be intentional about this when we're writing policy, when we're building these systems, when we're designing frameworks that are going to be around for a long time with some super major implications. And I think as a society, like, our leaders, our government leaders, our corporate leaders need to really think about the ramifications or repercussions that not having a policy that includes everyone creates. I also think cutting entry level roles destroys the pipeline. Right now, I think there's this propensity or potential to say we can get rid of, like, these super junior entry level, like, coders or this certain role because AI can do this, but 3 to 5 years out there's no bench. Like, how do you get people in the door to learn to be the leaders and to learn to do the more complex work? You need entry level roles. So I
Yeah.
think we really need to either restructure and reframe, like, the way that we're hiring people right out of college or right out of high school or a trade school. I was on a panel at my alma mater, the University of Denver, called The Future of Work. And there are plenty of young people in there, and they asked questions and they were scared. And they were like, what am I spending? Is spending money on a degree worth it anymore? Like, what should I be doing? Like, and that's because they're seeing what's happening to the job market. We don't even necessarily have accurate job market or employment numbers. There's a lot of noise out there. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and they're being hoisted into this environment. So I think we really, as a society, especially if you're in, like, the hiring space, or you're a leader in the corporate space, or you own your own business, or you're in politics, thinking about how do we protect are young people coming into the job market. Like, that's non-negotiable. They're not just gonna go away. What are you gonna create a society of homeless people? Right? Like, so that needs to be figured out. And that's not AI to blame solely. That's part of it. AI has to like takes part of it because I think companies believe that they can get rid of some of these entry level roles or more junior roles. And then I think again, and it's been thematic in this conversation with you, but small business paralysis, right? Like, so
Mhm.
there, I think there needs to be small business incubators, and there needs to be all sorts of resources and education to keep. I think small businesses are, I've used the word the engine, they're the glue of this country. Like the big businesses, I think at some point we all started kind of fanboying, fangirling these really big companies and CEOs because they've turned nothing into billions. Well, not nothing, they came from something, but they've turned it into billions, and now we have a trillionaire, and people are just, I think, kind of bushy-tailed and bright eyes about how much money you can make. But even those companies were a small business before. Think about Amazon. It was like a bookstore before, right? Like, so if we don't invest in small businesses,
Mhm.
we lose. And we lose as a country and we lose as a world, right? Like we've got to figure out how to have an approach that keeps a steady hand and keeps those businesses as the centerpiece. Because I said it before, I think a high tide raises all the ships. And right now we're seeing business owners are struggling. Economically, they're struggling with their marketing. They're like, how do I get more business? Should I start a business? That we had the pandemic that hit this economy really hard, a few years ago, and many businesses closed. And now
Mhm.
we have a different kind of, maybe not recession, but like kind of a recessionary traits that are happening with hiring and with the corporate side. And I do think, which, I'll talk about a little bit, there's a potential thing to capture on the positive side. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it. What should we be excited about with AI?
Yeah. That's kinda what I was getting to, I think because the hiring environment has been this way, and because AI now exists, people are able to start businesses more, like, AI is very powerful. It's a bit of an equalizer, that's what we say when we talk to people. We help small businesses and founders and growing businesses punch above their weight class. That's how we, like, say it. So it really, like, gives a five-person team the analyst capacities of a really big corporation and the capabilities that these companies have had for decades. So I think it can close the gap, and that's the gap that's been that gap that existed before is what has squeezed these companies out. But I looked up this statistic. Through May this year, we filled around 2.5 million new business applications, which is running
Wow.
around 17% ahead of last year. That's a major increase. So I think people are doing a lot more with less, and that's really exciting. And I also think AI has the ability to solve some of life and world's biggest problems. People say, you know, and that's another concern, backing up a little bit, like the data centers are very disruptive. They are draining resources like water and things like that. And that's no laughing matter. Like that, all of those things are very serious. But, and I should say, not negating, not but, and on the flip side of that, AI is so powerful and it's getting more powerful that if the right people are putting it to use in the right ways, it can solve those problems. We don't necessarily need to be draining our reservoirs or water systems. It's intelligent, not intelligent, but it can be formed through intelligence. And then also problems like homelessness, which I mentioned, and poverty and hunger and all of these things that have plagued humanity for a very long time. As we start getting to quantum speeds and AI rigor increases and increases, and the right people are shaping the policy and the decisions, you suddenly have a weapon, a tool to solve these problems, right?
Mhm.
Like, so, and the thing is, we are I think, the wealthiest country during the wealthiest time of all history. Like, there is more money and more abundance on this earth than there has ever been. Like, I said it earlier, there's a trillionaire that lives in this country. So it's not for lack of resources. It's for strategy. It's for intentionality and care to use those resources the right way. And I'm not recommending something radical. I'm saying with this abundance and with the knowledge that we have, including AI at our, fingertips, we can solve some of humanity's greatest challenges. That's what really excites me.
That's amazing, and I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. So let's wrap this session up together, and I have one last question for you. What is the number one piece of advice that you can give to the listeners?
Number one, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to probably give you two. I'm going to give you two. One
Great.
will be it'll be 1 plus 1A. One will be just get your hands on some AI tools to form your own opinion if you haven't. I think most fear comes from people who's never touched it, who's never really worked with it, who doesn't fully understand it, and I think it is here for better or for worse, and I think, like, being resistant to it, much like if you were earlier resistant to the internet or cell phone or an
Mhm.
automobile or any piece of technology that has come over the last years, you realize that technology only advances further. And like, we don't slow things down no matter what the resistance looks like. They change and hopefully we get better at them. So I'd say get your hands on it and start getting a little bit more comfortable. And then I think that 1B or number two is to just remember like the connections we have with each other.
Mhm.
And like I was talking to Christian on my podcast, Human in the Loop, and he said, go touch grass. And Liz, the founding board member, said, go into the office. And I think I'm borrowing from the themes that they shared. And it's just like, don't forget your human connection. Go have dinner with someone, reach out to someone, plan a party. Like, I feel like with social media and AI and all of this breaking technology that's coming sometimes that's supposed to connect us more, right? Like social media is supposed to connect us more and AI is supposed to make us have more information and accessibility, but we forget the human experience along the way.
Yeah.
So just go form some connections, some conversations, and remember what it is to be human again.
Amazing, rich conversation. Love talking to you. I want the listeners to know where they can find you. Can you walk us through where we can find you?
Yes, thank you. The plug. I love it. You can go to mindformission.com, and that's mindformission.com, and we're happy to have a conversation with you. I I, I'm reading this book called The Get Giver, so it's all around the philosophy of, like, being a giver all the time, like, thinking about ways you can give to people because it actually does the opposite. You get a lot in return because people think about you and what you gave to them.
Yeah.
So, if you just reach out to us and you want, like, some free game or a free starting point or whatever, we'll do that. One, I think is putting good energy in the world, and it goes to that philosophy of giving before that, but I just love the connection. So even if you're just curious, you don't know where to start, and you don't have a budget, still go to Mind Permission. And my email is anslem@mindpermission.com. So would love to hear from you.
Thank you. And I will brag a little bit about the fact that you also help small business owners. I had your information at a roadshow that I went to and I spoke. And I was so excited to share that because I think that's a population that's usually missed for AI. So I want to give you and your team kudos for remembering the people that are, to your point, glue of our world. Thanks so much for being a guest on our show.
Thanks for having me. Take care.